Welcome to the University of Findlay Art and Culture Show. I am your host, Sharinda, and we are excited that you are joining us today. I would like to introduce you to my guest, Mr. Del Suggs. Welcome.
Thank you, Sharinda. It's so good to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
We've been friends for many years,
yes.
And your schedule takes you around the country. I am so thrilled that this year we were able to get on your crazy schedule.
Well, it's been wonderful because I've got to spend 2 days here.
Yeah.
It's just been a real treat.
And it's a treat for us because the students get to better know you, and then you were so gracious to speak with our faculty and staff, and that doesn't happen very often, that an individual has the time in their schedule to do so many and then do an add-on. So
well, it's really been delightful, and your students and your staff have all just been extraordinary.
Thank
It's really
you.
Remarkable. You know, I think this is really, I know Findlay is a pretty famous school, but to me it's kind of a well-kept secret. I mean, if more people knew what you had going on here, you couldn't keep the doors, closed.
Well, thank you for saying that. We feel the same way.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the vision of the Art and Culture Show, to be able to introduce the amazing individuals and groups that we bring in, but also to let everyone know how awesome we are.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
this is actually a teaching lab. So the Art and Culture Show gives our students the opportunity they need for the hours behind the scenes for production. So we thank you for being part of our lab work today.
I'm just a rat in the maze, that's all. Yeah.
So one of the things, you are a man with many talents. One of the things that you do so well is present to college students and faculty and staff. You have published books, and you have been, I love that you say that you're a college nerd.
Yeah.
Because you have you always are measuring what's happening and what the needs are, and then you're willing to go back to school and get more education and get more information so that you are always on top of the game for what you present on.
Well, I try to do that because I really am a higher ed nerd. In fact, it's funny, when I had lunch with Kevin Kruger, the head of NASPA,
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, and I told him that, and he just laughed because we talk about the same things, and he comes from a university background where he's there, and I don't. I mean, I did my master's work, obviously in higher education, but I've never worked on a college campus except as a speaker or as a musician previously. But I just love this stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm just so intrigued with it. And I mean, a lot of it is because of my educational background. I got to study with Dr. Les Briggs and Dr. Bob Gagne at Florida State, and they were peers of B.F. Skinner.
Yeah.
So that whole concept of educational psychology and how it works really got planted deeply into me. And then the first 30 years or so of my career, I played music at colleges all over the country, and so I got to see exactly how that worked, and I got to understand the importance of student life and engagement and keeping students interested in school, keeping them enrolled in school, keeping them engaged and active on campus, and just the power of that. And so it was kind of a natural progression for me to then move from performing in that venue into actually spreading the good news about what we can do to keep students engaged and happy about being in class.
Yeah, and you take what they're learning in class and you are giving them the opportunity to have experiential learning by getting them plugged into student organizations, student government, student life. And so while you've been on our campus, because we're at the beginning of our academic year, the students who invited you to come said, let's have him talk about things that we're going to need answers to in about 3 weeks.
Perfect.
And so you have been here talking about burnout.
Right.
That doesn't make sense the second week of class to be talking about burnout.
But it will make sense in 6 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. And they'll already have the tools
And
to deal
the
with
students
that.
that are choosing to come know it's coming.
Right.
They're like, okay, how can you help me? So let's talk about that a little bit, because that is one of the programs that you have done twice on campus.
Right. Once for faculty and staff, and then once for students. Yeah.
Yes, and I've had the opportunity to sit in both, and I love the fact that you can take the material and present it for the professionals and present it for the students. Both are getting the same information, but you're at each level that we need you at.
Right.
So.
Well,
That's cool.
like you say, it's just important that students recognize burnout in themselves and in their peers, but it's also important that faculty and staff recognize it not only amongst themselves, but also in the students that you serve.
Sure.
I mean, that's just vital. If you're in a staff position, you need to be on the lookout for those students who have reached the end of their rope.
And so you go over a few things that we can look for. And we may have some viewers in our audience that are also at that point where they're flipping through and they're like, I can't take it anymore. So we don't want to give away the whole program, but what are two?
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing is just exhaustion. If you're just exhausted all the time, then your life is out of balance. You need to do something because you're spending too much time dealing with everything else in life and not enough dealing with yourself. So if you're just totally exhausted, that's the first thing you need to look out for right there. And then if you start to make a joke about everything, if start to get cynical about what you're doing. Oh, I mean, you need that assignment Monday? Yeah, that's going to happen. Then that's another whole step right there. And there's actually 4 steps
Sure.
of it. But the fact of the matter is, when you can start to see these things, and once you know that, it's like, oh, I can tell this person is starting to approach burnout. We probably need to intervene or at least have a conversation about that.
And within that conversation, maybe some tools we can offer.
Sure.
So many people can spot it, but then they can't talk about it. And that's what's wonderful about your program. You talk about restoration.
Yeah.
We can always come back from burnout if we know the tools.
Right. You've got to have those tools for attitude restoration. I'm really big on having a morning ritual. I think everybody needs to get up in the morning and they have something that they do every single day to put them in the right frame of mind to ease into the day. Because I see college students all the time. They wake up in the morning, they're already late. They run to class in their pajamas, not because they're comfortable, because they don't have time to change clothes. And they're always stressed like that first thing in the morning. And so I just encourage them to build a little extra time in your schedule. Get up a little earlier. Have some quiet time to read, to meditate, and do not get on your phone. I mean, that's the worst thing you could do first thing in the morning. Start doom scrolling, we call it, looking for all the bad things that have happened. This is the time you get up and you refresh yourself and you prepare yourself for the day ahead. I talk about things like setting personal goals so you have something to strive towards. A lot of people get burned out because they feel like they're spinning their wheels. And if you don't have goals to achieve, then you are spinning your wheels. You're wasting your time.
And one of the things you talk about that I absolutely love is the attitude gratitude. And how that you can be crashing on a day. Maybe it's that day that the alarm didn't cooperate and you are chasing your tail the whole day.
Right.
But at the end of the day, are you checking yourself and coming up with 3 good things, 3 positives for that day?
Yeah.
Because they're always there, but if we can grab them, it can help us recalibrate a little
Absolutely,
bit.
and it's just so important. I mean, we are as I always say, we are the luckiest people, not on earth. We're the luckiest people in the history of the earth.
And I love that. I love that you say that.
And we've just got to embrace that and realize that. And on our worst days, anybody in history would trade places with us. So we've got to develop this attitude of gratitude. We've got to be grateful for all that we have. And sometimes it's the big things, the important things, your relationship with God or your family or your friends. And some mornings you'll just be, I'm one of those people. I've had to say a little prayer before I turn the key, before you get in the car. It's
make
like,
sure it
please
starts.
start. And sometimes you're just grateful the car started. Sometimes you're just grateful you found a parking space. And that's okay.
Sometimes we just have to remind ourselves we're breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that we're stressed is a good thing because we're breathing.
Right.
It'll get better.
Yeah, absolutely, it'll get better. Yeah. So again, these are all things that you can do to help combat that feeling that we all get at some point in our lives of just being overwhelmed. Yeah.
And then we segued into another presentation with the students today over lunch, and that was how to get stuff done. And that sounds so simple, but I loved how you broke it apart for us because there are so many complicated things in life that we can simplify.
Right.
And if we're overwhelmed and we're burning out, that sounds overwhelmingly scary. So again, we're not going to give away the whole presentation, but let's talk about one of the things that you talk about with that.
Well, I mean, large tasks are always overwhelming, but when you break them down into the simple pieces, then that's when you realize, oh, I can do this.
And you use the grocery store as an example.
Yeah, well, I talk about the difference between simple tasks and complex tasks because people just make a to-do list and they just put everything on the list, and some things are simple, like read a chapter in a book. Well, that's easy. Takes one step. And some people write down, go grocery shopping. Like that's a one-step thing. It's not.
Right.
I mean, grocery shopping, first of all, you got to figure out what you're going to eat. Then you've got to do a meal plan. You've got to figure out what ingredients go in those meals. And
what your money budget is.
Yeah, you got to look at your budget, and then you got to find out where that's food. If you're like me, you got to do a quick check and see whether it's going to be cheaper at Aldi or Kroger or wherever, and then you got to actually do the shopping and do that. So there's a lot more involved than just going to the grocery store. I mean, that sounds simple, but it's actually a complex task. And just like studying for an exam, and you can put down study for exam. Well, what does that mean? It's a lot involved, so it's a complex task. You break it down into the simple tasks that make that up. Review your classroom notes. Review the reading that you did. Discuss any questions you have with your professor. Make flashcards if it's an important test. Take a practice exam if it's that kind of a test. But there are all sorts of things that add up to make this complex task a number of simple tasks that you can just break down, and then it's easy to approach.
And you get it done and you're like, wow,
yeah,
I did it.
It's not so overwhelming then,
So tonight you're going to be presenting on time management.
Yes.
And in the description of this presentation, you kind of give away a secret. We don't manage time, right?
Right, time happens anyway.
Yeah, no matter what we're doing, it
anyway.
happens.
Yeah.
So what is one takeaway from that presentation that we can talk about right now?
Well, basically planning. You have to plan things. I'm all about to-do lists, like I just talked about with complex and simple tasks. You got to have a to-do list. But the latest thing that I've been doing is not just making a to-do list, but I schedule things. So I have an item on the to-do list like pick up the dry cleaning. I don't just put it on my list and hope I get around to it. It goes then on my calendar. 2 o'clock, pick up dry cleaning. And so I actually schedule things now that I make sure that they get done that way.
And I love that.
That's the only way in this crazy world we live in now that we can get everything done. It's not just about putting it on a list and hoping we get around to it. You've got to put it on the books. You got to put it in your calendar.
Well, and you said that if we have a list and we know what we have to do, we don't celebrate what we're getting off because we have everything haunting us that needs to be done. But when you get it in a calendar, you see you're doing it, you're giving yourself permission to do it. The rest of that stuff isn't as much driving you crazy in your head because you're getting it out on paper and it seems more manageable.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to think about, I've got to go around and do this. No, I don't have to think about going to picking up my dry cleaning. It's already on my schedule for 2 o'clock. So then I can forget about it until 2 o'clock.
And the thing that you said was most important about this, follow the calendar after you set it.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't do you any good to have it there if you're not going to follow it. So set yourself up for success.
Exactly, and pad your schedule. I always say if it takes you 30 minutes to eat lunch, give yourself 45 minutes. That way you have 15 minutes extra if something goes wrong, or if you lose some time in the morning, then you've got a little extra time.
Or you need that cat nap.
Yeah, exactly. Are you a little power nap real quick? Or if you want to go ahead and get started on things in the afternoon, you've got a little bit extra time to get moving there too. So yeah, pad your schedule so there's a little bit more time built in there than it's always nice to be finished early.
Sure.
Even if it's not early, yeah.
Well, and you made the point, airlines do this all the time.
Sure.
They schedule things, and I never thought about it. I fly a lot for the university, and I'm always so excited when we land and they say, we're in 6 minutes early, and I'm like, yay! But I've never paid attention to the schedule that it's technically only a 37-minute flight, and they have it scheduled for 2 hours. But that's what they're doing. They're padding it and keeping their customers happy.
Right, and that way, of course, as you say, it makes them look good because they're always early. Gosh, because we always complain about how the airlines are always late. They're always early, although they're not technically early because it just doesn't take as long as they allow to fly the distance. But it's brilliant because then it makes sure that everybody makes their connections when they fly in. So do that in your own life. Make sure you make your connections. Make sure you're on time by adding extra time into your own calendar.
Such great words of wisdom. And I know you do multiple other themes and programs for the collegiate market. And something that some of our viewers have learned over the years, because this is our 6th season of the show,
terrific.
is that many of the performers that come here and speakers, they also travel a conference circuit.
Right.
And there are 2 major conference circuits for U.S. campuses. And you have had the honor of working in both of those markets over the years. And one of them has a publication called Campus Activities Magazine.
Right.
And it's a wonderful publication that's put out for both student leaders and professionals in the college market. And you have received some really cool honors.
Well, I've been really fortunate.
Yes, we've been fortunate to experience your talents, and those talents have come back as awards for you. So one of them, wasn't it a type of lifetime achievement award?
Well, actually, yeah, in 2001, actually, so it's been a while now. I was actually named to the National Campus Entertainment Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So a Hall of Fame performer there. And then about 5 years ago, I was actually named one of the top 5 performers in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
So that was just overwhelming, because I've worked with so many great artists in this field, you know, but to be chosen as one of the top 5 for the last 25 years is just almost overwhelming, you know.
But it's so deserved.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've had a lot of longevity in this market, and I'm really grateful for the folks that have, like you, that have kind of helped me along and pointed me in the right direction.
Well, the speaking is one forte, but you had mentioned earlier the music is another passion of yours.
Right.
And on top of all that, the service that you do for the organizations you serve, it's not showing up at a meeting and taking notes. You're in some of their leadership positions within those organizations.
Well, if you care about something, you've got to give back. You know, you've got to, you really have to step up and take on those roles. I'm currently serving as president of Florida's Big Bend Scenic Byway, and the Big Bend Scenic Byway is a national scenic byway, and it's Florida's answer to the Blue Ridge Parkway, or the Pacific Coast Highway. But it's something I deeply believe in, because it's an opportunity for us to take this beautiful drive and turn it into an economic engine for ecotourism.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're going to have this beautiful road be destroyed by tourist development and things like that. It's going to be preserved because people want to come and see how beautiful it is.
Yeah.
You know, and just like the Blue Ridge Parkway. And so that's, you know, so I believe in that, and so I've worked with that organization for the last 15 years or so there. So and I work with a lot of different.
I know you do, and you're also passionate about animals and, again, the music. But it came because you adopted what you teach early on. And then that evolved into the Association for Promotion of Campus Activities, APCA conference, asking you, will you create these presentations?
Sure.
And what was your response when they asked you that?
Well, you know, it's really amazing, because, you know, there's this whole thing in life where one door closes, another door opens. And I had been performing at colleges as a singer-songwriter for 25 plus years. And I was really aging out of it, you know, because it's hard to sing original music for 18, 19, 20-year-olds when you're in your 50s, you know. But I was still hanging on doing that. But I was also teaching these little workshops and things that were hugely successful.
Yeah.
And the director of APCA, Eric Lambert, came to me one day. He said, I know you love the music and you love playing music, but you should be a workshop guy, because your workshops are the highest rated thing at our conferences.
Yeah.
And so I put a couple together, and I started to do those in addition to my concerts. And then after a couple of years, the University of Akron was the first one that did this. They had brought me in 2 years in a row to do a concert and also a workshop. And the third year they said, we can't wait to get you back this fall. This year, don't bring the guitar. We don't need it. All we need is you to come and speak. And I was like, wow, one door is closed, another door is open.
Yeah.
So it's you know, life is beautiful like that.
It is. Yeah. It is. So in addition to speaking and serving, you're also a writer. Yes,
and I have this book, Truly Leading Lessons in Leadership, was my first publication. And it was initially published in 2011, went through 7 printings, and then in 2016 I did a complete revision, so it's now out in the second edition, and I just completed actually a secondary revision of the second edition, if that makes sense. So I just
Sure,
updated
because
it.
everything's always changing and
Well,
evolving.
absolutely, and so you have to keep these things updated. So I just went through that, and so the most current printing, and this is the 7th printing of the second edition too. But it's been a real joy for me to publish this, because books just they allow you to carry your message on even further. You know, I hear from students all the time about how they've referred to this, because it's in a lot of ways it's a reference book. It's not like a novel you read, you know, from cover
Right.
to
It's
cover
more
to
of
cover.
a opportunity to plug in some how-tos.
Right.
To what you're already doing.
Yeah, and this is the sort of thing where I always tell students, keep this handy, and if you have trouble recruiting members for your club or organization, grab this book. I've got a whole chapter on recruitment. You know? If you're having trouble running your meetings, grab this book, because I've got a whole section on meeting management. You know,
So people that are creative and they work in a for-profit organization, a nonprofit organization, a church, they can take this and read it thinking about the groups they're working with, and these same ideas and principles would be applicable.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It works for any group. And again, it's all about your basic leadership skills.
Right.
And mostly reflecting on servant leadership. And you know, in one chapter I talk about how, you know, leaders should think of themselves as shepherds, you know, and then we should be thinking about taking care of the people that we lead, and that should be foremost in our, you know, in our point of view.
Absolutely. So if someone is listening and they're saying, this guy needs to come to see us, we want to talk with him, how do people get a hold of you? Do you have a website?
I do have a website, dellsuggs.com.
And it's Suggs?
Correct. Dell with one L.
Yeah.
DELSUGGS.com. I'm also all over social media, so I'm easy to find under Dell Suggs. You know, with Instagram, with Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, and Facebook. So I'm pretty easy to find online. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing some of your insight. Before we wrap up, we got to do some life hacks.
Okay.
That is another thing that Dell is really well known for, and you shared some with the students today, and everyone learned. No one knew any of the ones you gave us today.
Well, I just love those. I just love those little life hacks, and one that I think I shared today that I think is just really important is Sharpie ink. You know, we always you
It's
stick,
so funny.
You're putting a cap back on your Sharpie, and you miss if you go over it with a highlighter.
A yellow highlighter.
A yellow highlighter that softens the ink, and then it'll wash off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it also works. You know, sometimes people will grab a Sharpie and go up to a whiteboard by mistake.
By mistake.
Yeah. And it's almost impossible to get it off. But if you go over the letters, the ink with a highlighter, it softens that and comes right off.
That's awesome.
So just almost silly little things like that. But I think it's
But
important.
they're worth knowing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you should. One of your next books should be Dell's Life Hacks. That would be so fun.
Be great fun.
So
yeah.
thank you.
My pleasure, Sharinda.
And thank you for tuning in today. We are so happy you have been visiting with us. We look forward to seeing you the next time. Until then, be well.